We're locked up in a tight one against the Magic here. Let's keep it in the second quarter. Harden, he had 2 steals in the second quarter. Here's one of them. You better run. Runs the floor. Joe Harris. Hey, Joe! And then Harden drives and, listen, better find the dude who butters the bread, and that's that dude right there, Kevin Durant. He had 16 in the first half. Nets up 7. Harden running the floor. Green. Harden looked in fine shape. Take another look. And our analysts say, hey, listen, his assists are going to go up, his points are going to go down. Harden, 8 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, 4 turnovers in the first half. The Nets are up 2. Let's go to the third quarter. How about a highlight that's Harden free? It's Kevin Durant throwing it down. Back to Harden. Dribble. Step back, Bobby Jack. 3 of 10 from 3. The Nets up 3 after 3. Let's go fourth quarter. Still tight. All right, Harden drives. I mean, listen, he garners attention. He's a great player. He's an 8-time All-Star. He's got a couple gold medals, 3-time scoring champion. And that's what happens. Durant, 42. Harden, triple-double, 32 points, 12 rebounds, 14 assists. He was 1 turnover away from a quadruple dubious. The Nets win, 122-115.
It felt unbelievable. I hope you can tell by my smile and my play. Whoever has a hot hand, that's who deserves the ball. You know, the basketball finds energy. It finds people that have good energy, good spirit. So that's what I try to bring to the game tonight. I'm so excited for Kyrie to get back. You know, he's a key piece to what we're trying to do. And, the chemistry, as soon as we can build that, as soon as we can be on the court together, it's going to be scary hours.
Hey, man, it was scary here. It was historic. Most points scored and assisted in a team debut in NBA history. Just last season, Kyrie Irving created 67 points, 50 of which he scored in his debut with the Nets. Harden scored or assisted on 64 points in his debut with the Rockets back in 2012. He had 37 points, 12 assists in a win against the Pistons. And then in his Nets debut, Harden scored or assisted on 63 points, 3rd most all-time. He becomes the first player in NBA history with a 30-point triple-double in his debut with the team. Our research, it's better than yours. David Fizdale suiting up for us. And, Coach, James Harden looked great. It's one game. It's -1 head of the big 3. So what can we take away from it?
He looked pretty good. I don't have any questions about his conditioning, I'll tell you that. But I thought that was a close game for the most part. But I like how Steve Nash put the ball in his hands and had KD running in the pick and rolls with him and letting him do what he does, and that's make other people better and at the same time kill you if you forget about him, and he did that. So that really stood out to me.
One play really stood out as well towards the end. What was it, and why should we file it away?
Very important play for a guy to walk onto a team and they're already recognizing these things and making these plays. But James Harden had the ball in an isolation situation with the clock running down, and he could have taken a step back 3 or done something like that. But instead, he underhand scooped it to KD because he saw KD had a great matchup against Vucevic. But KD, seeing that the help came off the corner shooter, hit the guard Brown right in his shooting pocket, and he knocked down that shot. All of those plays say that this team is going to work on trusting each other. And if they can trust each other with the amount of talent that they can put on the floor, man, they could end up being champions.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 teams. They're fully healthy. They got their full complement of players. I want you to pick me a winner. The Nets against the Heat.
Nets.
Nets against the Celtics.
Nets.
Nets against the 76ers.
Nets.
Nets against the Bucks.
Nets.
David Fizdale boldly goes.
Hearing all of that, including what James just said about adapting his play and changing and becoming a little bit more of a playmaker, what do you guys think the biggest challenge is, Paul, for how this big 3 is going to come together?
Well, James said it. I heard him say it a couple times, the sacrifice. He can't be the James Harden that he was in Houston. But my question is to the New Jersey Nets is the style of play.
Jersey?
I mean, the Brooklyn Nets.
Where you going, man?
They were Brooklyn Nets when you were there, Paul.
We once said that we would never see a jump shooting team win a championship, then you had the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
And now you have 3 great one-on-one players. Is this the year that we have a one-on-one team style of play? I mean, that's who they are. I mean, am I going to ask James to cut back door? Am I going to ask him to spot up? Am I going to ask the same of Kyrie? So my question is, what style of play? Can they be the first one-on-one team, ISO team to win? We have yet to see. And I don't know what style of play that's going to be, because you have to use these players to their strength. But the sacrifice, that's going to be the biggest things in James is going to have to do in order for this team to succeed.
Yeah, and that's the word I kept hearing, sacrifice. And Spo used to have a great saying, sacrifice is easy until it's you. And so we're going to see if these guys are willing to sacrifice. And what does that look like? What does that mean? That means that time of possession with the ball as an individual. You got to make decisions quicker now, because you got 2 other stars sitting on the weak side. So you got to make those decisions quicker. Defensively, when you're on defense, are you taking pride in being a top-level defensive team, or is it all about scoring? And when you have the basketball, those are the places that I want to see if those guys are willing to make the sacrifices. And then finally, the off-the-court distractions. Can we get that behind us now and get to where y'all just playing basketball and showing what you can really do as a team?
Well, you guys, we were talking right before the show that you guys, when you came together as a big 3 in Boston, Paul, the fit was very natural, just between the position Ray played, the way you played, the way KG played. You were saying before the show the fit in Miami was not as just slot. You guys really pioneered that positionless basketball in terms of making it just a regular part of the equation. How did you figure that out as a coaching staff?
Pain, losing to Dallas, really suffering and having to go through that, because Dwayne and LeBron were so dynamic with the similar type of basketball game where they needed that ball in their hands a lot. And ultimately, it did come down to us adapting as a coaching staff, but also when we talk about sacrifice. Paul was just saying it. We got after it defensively. That's one thing you could say. That team got after it defensively. And both of those guys, when they didn't have the ball, they made a conscious effort to move without it.
Yeah, that's my biggest question.
Yeah.
I mean, offense is not going to be a problem.
Defending.
Can they be a top 5 defensive team? Because if not, I don't see them getting to the finals.
Well, you see this usage rate and clutch time. So these are all, by the way, they all have a track record of being clutch performers. We threw it up here yesterday on the show. In the last 10 seasons, 8 guys have accumulated 1,000 points in the clutch. The Nets now have 3 of those 8. So they have guys who can come through in the clutch. The question, of course, is a little bit who takes the last shot, but I do think that stuff works itself out.
It does.
It's going to be some guys one night, some guys another night. In terms of defense, I completely agree. I mean, I remember so much, Fizz, that you guys had your first training camp once all those guys came together. Eric decided to hold it at a military base, and that you guys ran only defensive drills for the first few days, week?
It was at least 3 or 4 days that we just went straight defense, and it was to set a tone at a military base because we was getting ready for them. And you had to be so disciplined and sharp to beat that Boston team. They guarded the heck out of you. They moved the ball. They ran their stuff to precision. And they weren't going to beat themselves. So we knew this wasn't no game.
But he said it did get me to Brooklyn. Paul, how do you see that whole situation? I certainly understand Boogie's side, but also James is right. What he did got him where he wanted to go. The system basically allowed for that.
Well, yeah, I understand both sides. I mean, because sometimes disrespect comes in all forms and fashion. It's not just what you say, it's your actions. And Boogie was saying that, like, look, you didn't come to training camp on time. And then we look at his last 5 games with the Rockets. That's not the James Harden we know.
No.
And so in saying that, it was his actions that garnered the disrespect. But on the other side, what James Harden was saying, he was like, you heard him say, I gave him everything.
Yep.
Right.
I gave him everything. And apparently his everything wasn't good enough to bring a championship to Houston. And that's all you can ask for from a player. So I understand his frustration as a veteran in this league, as an all-time player. He's made all the money, shoe contract. He's done everything you could do in a game of basketball. Now he just wants to win a championship, and it got frustrating for him.
Coach Steve Nash was asked about this also this morning, and I'm just read off my laptop here for y'all. He said, I think James carried that team for many years. He said gave them everything he had. So,
right, I like to say
I don't think we need to say anything more. Who has 7 on this
We're a
panel?
team, baby.
It might
We're a
be,
team.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
So kind. Coming up, how good are the Rockets now after acquiring Victor Oladipo in that massive 4-team blockbuster trade? We will discuss the Houston side of things in a moment, but You know where we're going first. Yeah, Brooklyn. It says something about a trade if we can simultaneously have been talking about it possibly happening for months and have it knock everyone over when it comes through. Durant, Harden, Kyrie, all on one team. It's a dazzling collection of basketball talent. Durant on his way to proving he's right back up there with LeBron as the best player in the NBA. Harden, one of the game's greatest ever scorers, who's finished top 5 in MVP voting 6 of the past 7 years. Kyrie is the league's best ball handler who can flat out perform magic around the hoop. They are 3 of the most outrageously talented players in the league. But they're also, of course, 3 of the NBA's most distinct personalities, making all of this potentially explosive in about 100 different directions, both good and bad. So what does happen when 3 crazy kids moved into one of those Brooklyn lofts together to try to take on the world? I'm glad you asked. Yes, in honor of this mega trade, The Jump presents our latest show within a show. Three's Company, Brooklyn edition. And just like with Jack, Janet, and Chrissy,
Jack
we can
Roper.
expect plenty of hijinks
Why you got Kyrie's face looking like that?
as we see
Everybody
how
else
this
smiling.
group meshes.
Why did they put him in Chrissy's spot, though?
Now, executive producer, Nets general manager, Sean Marks, is optimistic. Here he was this morning talking about the screaming neon elephant in the room, team chemistry.
Look, I think whenever you're meshing personalities, I think we've got to wait and see how this all fits on the floor and so forth. I think these guys have given us the right answers. They've said, hey, they want to play together. They can see this fitting. And I think they're at a time in their careers, they understand that there's without a doubt going to be some nights where one or two need to sacrifice for the other and so forth. But I think they're all looking for that common goal.
Marks added that Harden and Durant already knowing and liking each other should help speed the team building process here. Perhaps, although as he was speaking, it was hard to not think about how that same scenario went so wrong between Harden and Russell Westbrook that Russ asked out after just one season. As for the Kyrie angle, Marks denied that Kyrie's current situation spurred the Nets to finally pull the trigger on this trade, insisting it was not a hedge to give Durant a more reliable co-star. He also noted Kyrie is, quote, very excited to return to the team after his mysterious absence. But honestly, none of that addresses what is going to be the real issue going forward. Is Kyrie going to be okay with essentially being the third option in Brooklyn behind 2 former MVPs? We know part of why Kyrie asked out of Cleveland was because he didn't want to continue shaping either his game or his standing on the team around LeBron anymore. We know there were issues coexisting with teammates in Boston. We know that in other recent big threes, guys like Kevin Love, Chris Bosh have had some trouble adjusting to that third role. And these 2 guys, well, they're at least notoriously mellow. At least Kyrie plays a different position. He will have the ball in his hands more. Maybe Ray Allen and Boston is a better comparison. Although clearly it is something to watch, as is how this Nets team looks on the defensive end. With Jared Allen out the door, the Nets no longer have anyone who you would call a defensive standout. In fact, 5 of the Nets' key rotation players had a negative defensive real plus-minus last season. That's a lot. Still, all Brooklyn really needs is a functional level of team defense, something KD and Kyrie, and yes, at times, yes, even James, have shown to be capable of. So if they want to play hard on that end, they can. Also, let's be honest, there's going to be plenty of nights, at least in the regular season, they won't have to. In a year where there is no plan to hold an actual all-star game, Brooklyn should have plenty of that vibe nightly. At their best, we could see a 3-ring circus of death-defying feats of basketball brilliance. Will it be enough to threaten the defending champion Lakers at the very top of the NBA pyramid? We'll have to see. Will it be enough to cause an arms race in the East with the Bucks, Sixers, Heat, or Celtics now trying to pull off their own big trades? We will see. Will it be 3?
And playing well, the difference between this 3 and let's say the big 3 that Golden State had with Kevin Durant, those guys were all ball movers and shooters, right? Klay Thompson was moving off screens. Klay was moving off screen. The 3 of these guys are all ball handlers.
I'm still looking at this team like, who's going to take over? Because when you look at James Harden, he gets his rhythm by playing with the rock. KD playing with the rock. Kyrie playing with the rock. So that is going to be trouble because they're not shooters like Steph and Klay who can come out and shoot the ball. So this big 3 is a little bit worrisome for me because they all playing with the rock. And now, Who's going to play defense? Who's going to come off the bench? They gave away a lot to get this guy, and now they have nothing because at the end of the day, you need what people like to call the others, the bench, to step up. They have no bench. They have nobody to step up. So I'm looking at the 3 J's, Jeff, Jordan, and the other guy, the shooter, to come off.
Joe Harris.
Joe Harris, to shoot the ball and play. They gotta step up. And we know Jordan is old. We don't know how he's going to step up. So, I know how it is when you get up in age and still trying to compete.
Yeah, we both do. But the crazy thing is when you look at it, obviously there's questions about Kyrie, what his situation is. And then James Harden is obviously not in the championship shape that he has been the last few years. And when
that gets fixed over the course of the season.
But this is my thing. Like, look at this picture here. This was James Harden going into the bubble. People were talking about how amazing shape he was. Now he overjumped this shape and went to the next position. So he went from super skinny to and he did this. Yeah, and he did this in about a 3-month span. So that some of that is probably unhappy and he's not wanting to be there. And we're just not going to allude to other things. But to win a championship, and we're talking about winning championships, you got to be.
We know body shaming on this show, Richard.
It's not body shape. I'm saying he's unhappy.
He's unhappy. I think
come on.
You look at his body and you look at
same thing with Jokic last year. Jokic wasn't in great shape. He got in great shape. They went to a conference final.
Okay, so you guys have both been in versions of this kind of situation. You played on a team, right, with Vince Carter, with Jay Kidd. Robert, I can name several teams that you played in, several locker rooms with big personalities, big, huge stars. How does it sort itself out? How does that work over the course of a season?
You have to have someone that's not one of the big 3 who's willing to step up and say, hey, guys, it ain't about you 3. It's about us as a team. I want to win a championship just as bad as you guys. Just because you're making the most money, you're getting the most notoriety, I'm still on this team. I'm looking at Jeff Green to be that guy. He's a voice of reason. People forget he's played with KD before when KD first came into the league. So he might have his ear. So he can talk to these guys and say, hey, listen, it ain't about you. Let's work this thing out and play together as a team and win a championship, because that is the goal, to cement our name in history.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is this. Look, now KD's won some championships, right? Kyrie's won a championship. James Harden is the one that hasn't, right? So I know that these guys are motivated, but there is a different type of motivation when you're searching for something that you haven't found yet, right? And it's like, look, they've won all the awards. Kyrie's won the Rookie of the Year. He's won all the other stuff. He's probably not going to win an MVP with this team, but I'm just saying it's like, what are they fighting for? And so when you're trying to fight for something you haven't gotten, there's easier to make sacrifices a la the Big 3, a la the Miami Big 3. They're fighting for something that they haven't gotten yet. So that's one thing about this Brooklyn team. Are they full already, right?
Right. I mean, it's like you, when you were with the Nets, you stepped up and said, look, I know I'm far and away so much better than